Hello, 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 and welcome back to SPOILERCAST, a Hungry Gamers offshoot that aims to inform, entertain, and hopefully educate you all on one particular release from within the geek and gaming culture universe. And on this episode, we are tackling a game that was released on the 9th of November to much critical acclaim, earning a Metacritic score of 94 out of 100. Developed by Santa Studio and published by Sony, this spoilercast sees us traversing the 9 realms in the follow-up to 2018's God of War. We're talking about none other than God of War Ragnarok. And a quick little setting, a quick little update on where this game is from a narrative perspective. It goes as follows. Embark on an epic and heartfelt journey as Kratos and Atreus struggle while with holding on and letting go. Against a backdrop of Norse realms torn asunder by the fury of the Aesir, they've been trying their utmost to undo the end times, but despite their best efforts, Fimbulwinter presses onward. Witness the changing dynamic of the father-son relationship as they fight for survival. Atreus thirsts for knowledge to help him understand the prophecy of Loki, as Kratos struggles to break free of his past and be the father his son needs. See for yourself how fate will force a choice upon them, between their own safety or the safety of the realms. All the while, hostile Asgardian forces assemble. And listeners, I'm your extremely humble host, Brendan White. You can find me just about everywhere at Brendan8bit. And joining me today on this spoilercast journey is the Australian version of Sindri and Brock. You can find them on the socials at Jono himself and at BenMCJ. Obviously, we're talking about Jono Peck and Benny McJanet. Welcome to the Forge, boys. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Boy.
Pretty good. I feel like...
I'm going to assume I'm
Brock.
Brock.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm definitely...
I'm Brock. Yeah.
Pairing.
Yeah. I think it went without saying when I went with those monikers. I figured you'd just assume that mantle and, take that sort of title admirably because there's a lot of Brock in your mannerisms and... general well-being, and that's not a shot to you or Brock. I think you're a beautiful character, whichever side of this coin we're talking about. But yeah, boys, we are here talking about the biggest game, or one of the biggest games, you could say, of 2022, the follow-up to 2018's massive hit. Obviously, we're talking about God of War Ragnarok, and my goodness gracious, what a journey we've all been on together. And indirectly experiencing this game. We've been sort of chipping away at this game over the last week or so since it's released to much critical acclaim. But let's jump in and maybe start talking about our general thoughts and what we thought about the game. How was our experience? So, Jono, I'll throw it over to you, young squire. Let us know what you thought or what you think about God of War Ragnarok.
What can I say? This is such a fantastic video game out of Santa Studio. I went in blind to this, after the first trailer, I was like, of course this game's coming. I'm not going to watch any more about it. I just don't want to know anything that's happening. And it really delivered on what they set up in that first game. I think the first game in 2018, it showed a lot of restraint, but also there were limitations where they didn't have that many characters and they didn't take you to all the locations that you maybe hoped that you were going to get to as far as those 9 realms goes. So this time around, they delivered on everything that was set up, particularly with the ending of God of War 2018. We got to see behind the curtain. We got to meet everyone that we wanted to meet and see all the cool extra locations that this game has to offer. And yeah, I had such a great time. 42 hours was my playtime before credits rolled. So I did quite a bit of everything before feeling towards the end I had to get the thing finished so we could talk about it here. But yeah, I can't wait to talk about the rest of this game.
I'm with you, Benny. What about yourself? I see you also went in sort of equally as blind with Ragnarok on the similar beat to Jono there.
Yeah. So it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, I knew the game was coming. I knew I was going to play it. I was sold from the first trailer. I was like, oh, yep, it's more God of War. I wasn't expecting it this year, if I'm going to be completely honest. I was still expecting it even a month out from release. I was thinking this is probably still get delayed till next year, but no, they got it out, and holy crap! It's goddamn, it's impressive. But I haven't watched any of the trailers besides I think the first announcement. Not even the first announcement trailer, because that was just literally just a screen grab with the Omega symbol and it just said Ragnarok. But I think there was one trailer I remember watching, but I don't remember any of the details of it. So I'm very cautious of what we say that could be spoilerish because I just don't remember what was in trailers and what wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this game is just huge. It's so big. It's deceptively huge. I keep using that term deceptively because every time you think the world or the game itself can't get any bigger, like you just surprised and find something else new. And literally, even now I've finished the game, I went into one area and I was like, oh shit, there's a whole nother area behind this other area. Like it just keeps on surprising me with how big this game really actually is.
I think the first game I counted like 8 or 9 characters, not including the quest givers who were like ghosts and spirits, and like that was it, because you heard people talked about, or you didn't see them, you heard their voice. This time there was like 30 or 40 named characters with voice lines, and stories that go deep. They weren't just kind of like, you know, they pop up and that's it. So they really, they went all in with that.
Totally, and like that's the thing is, I found myself while I was playing this going, shit, I kind of wish I spent a lot more time in the end game of the first one, because one, it's been a few years, so I kind of wish I went back and played it for a start just to refresh myself. But also just that I wish I kind of did a bit more closer to the 100% than what I did, because I remember I played it, the first one, going, oh, look, they've got all these other realms they haven't opened up. They're probably going to release it as DLC. I'll come back then when the DLC comes out, and it never came out.
This is it. This is the DLC.
This is the deal, yeah. So there was that. And also, the last thing that really... I had some really big expectations for the father-son story in this. And spoilers for God of War 2018, but if you're listening to this, I'm going to assume you've played the first one from 2018.
Yeah, I hope so.
My cat being named Loki and having a very father-son relationship with him in my own way, being a cat dad, the last game's ending really hit hard for me when you find out his name's Loki and all that. Well, that's what his mother wanted to call him. So I came into this one having really big expectations for how this Loki character would play out. So yeah, but yeah, it's like you said, it's just awestruck. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's like I think you said you rolled credits at about 36 hours or 36 and a half, I think.
No, it was literally 35 hours, 58 minutes and something seconds. It was that close to 36 hours.
Yeah, and so Jono, you rolled it, you said 42. I was at 32 and a half to roll the main story. Obviously, I've got a lot more exploration and quests to finish and wrap up over the coming weeks and months. But yeah, like the word you just mentioned there, Benny, I was awestruck and just emotional just about the entirety of that 32-hour journey. Like the highs, the lows, like I was laughing at times, I was upset and sad at times, I was angry and frustrated at times, whether that be from like a big twist in the story or just genuinely hitting a couple of difficulty curves with fights that just whooped my ass over and over, and I sort of had to have a break and reset and get back into it. But this game, like you both have said, it builds on everything that the 2018 release did and then adds more and more and more. Like the scope of this game is unlike anything or just about anything I've ever played. Like recency bias aside, this game is epic in scale. The quality and the things we'll jump into some more of the finer details as we record this potty.
Epic is super spot on, because, and I've used this to describe it to other people as well, and as I'm saying, the game is just epic. It is basically it's on Marvel's Endgame level of epic in terms of, you know, story and design. And that's what it feels, especially when you roll credits on it. Like you get to the end of the game, it gets to that sort of end game level of epicness.
Yeah, the only game that I can think that comes close to me from just this sense of scale and just like, holy moly, this world is huge, the characters are larger than life, everything's memorable, is Elden Ring. So it's crazy that 2 games have come out that are both, you know, littered with a bit of fantasy, depending, and obviously this is more based in mythology and whatever else, where Elden Ring's, a lot of it's all just fabricated, but there is similar beats and just worlds to explore and just that mysticism and just huge, grand, epic scale. And yeah, this game is a very, very special game.
I didn't know Elden Ring had narrative.
It does. It's a more subdued way of telling story, that's for sure. Like there's not many NPCs you've got rolling with you just having random discussions and pouring their heart out in stories and things as you go. But there is a story to be told, and it's a pretty special story in Elden Ring. But this is just next level storytelling, and maybe we can sort of pivot into sort of the whole story, voice work, music combination, just to sort of show our thoughts or share our thoughts as far as what we thought about the story that played out in our respective run-throughs, and also the other parts that create this whole thing with the voice work, the animation, the music, everything like that. So JP, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, what can we say? It's phenomenal. Like, epic is the word that's been thrown around, and that is exactly the way that it plays out. Like, you have this, without spoiling anything, just this, the game's called Ragnarok. So where do you think it's going to end up? But it's a progression from one thing to the next that escalates as you go, and you're kind of cringing as certain decisions are made, and the surprises that just constantly keep you on your toes as far as like the way that different characters interact and get introduced into the story or leave the story. They really just kept things ticking along. I felt like there were times where it did drag because of that longer length. 42 hours is a long time for a fairly linear story to be told.
You're just getting through the opening in Valhalla, mate. Like that's this is child's play compared to Assassin's Creed.
And that was
But I'm with you. It can be a lot to
that was
consume.
obviously a big problem with Valhalla. But anyway, like I can see, like, there were times where it was like, okay, this section's going a bit longer than I kind of want it to. But then at the same time, I do see the purpose behind each of those decisions to elongate certain moments, because the result is that you get a very deep story and you get very fleshed out characters. As I mentioned before, like, everyone in this game has they play into the key themes of the story, which is about trust and about like family and the search for the truth versus safety and security, and like there's all this stuff that's in there, and everyone's kind of got their own ambitions and their own reasons for doing things, and you wouldn't get that if it was half the length, which I guess the first game was probably 25 to 30 hours compared to the 40 to 50, depending on what you do in the game. I'm not getting emotional, I'm just kind of sick, so that's why my voice is cracking occasionally.
I think it's a bit of both. Don't lie.
He's choking up.
Yeah, I think that those themes were really well delivered on. The music takes you straight into that world with some of the epic, amazing Norse inspired vocals and instrumentation. It's so good, and I think that it's a game that we'll reflect on because of the expertise in the voice work, the motion capture, the voice cast itself is fantastic. There's some very well experienced voice actors in here. Emily Rose, who people know as Eleanor in Uncharted, makes an appearance. Ryan Hurst is obviously got a pretty impressive Hollywood IMDb. Richard Schiff, like it goes on and on, where it's just they might not be household names, but they're all voices that come up and you're like, maybe I recognize it or I don't, but it's so well delivered that I feel like I've heard it somewhere, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I completely understand what you're saying there. Like the money that they would have shelled to put this cast together for both the voice and the motion capture is very impressive. Like it's on the levels of like a pretty big Hollywood film to some degree. There's a lot of people that are in the periphery, like Brett Dalton, who does Freya's sort of kicked around a little bit here or there. Deborah Ann Woll, obviously from Daredevil and True Blood is the thing I always think of her from as the attractive redheaded femme fatale there. And then even Milana Vaintrub, who is the face of one of the telephone commercials over in America all the time, but she was also in...
She's been in Borderlands and stuff too.
Yeah. What is she? She's done some acting. Very, very talented. But it's certainly anchored though by Christopher Judge and Sonny Suljic as Kratos and Atreus, because those two, so you're spending the entirety of the game with a mixture of those two characters, and they just have such a commanding presence, like especially Kratos and Christopher Judge, and just that depth in his voice. Like, it's gone a few octaves deeper from 2018's release, but it just manages to grab you even more or even quicker, at least for me. Like, and it's nice to see, like you were sort of saying, I can't remember if it was before we started recording at the jump here, JP, but you were sort of saying he has less dialogue than in the first one, but I think what he says in this game is more impactful because he is bearing his soul and sort of humanizing himself in a little bit of a way. And then seeing Atreus become of age, you know, he's a young teenage boy now, so you're dealing with all that rapscallionness of it, and you know, we've all been teenage boys, we know better, and you can see a lot of the things he does, and I'm like, you're being a little dick right now, but you know what, I would be probably doing the exact same thing if I was you. So it's really well done.
The first time he spoke, I was like, oh, his voice is deeper. And I remember like they had issues in the first game because his voice was breaking during the development, so they had to like they probably had to
get back up there.
Probably had to record his lines more times than usual to get it all rushed and finished in time before it completely went deep. But it was jarring to go straight to that, and then to hear his prepubescent voice occasionally in flashbacks and stuff.
Yeah, he's a young man in Ragnarok, but that combination of elite voice acting with that just grand symphonic musical scale, like every time you hear some of those like throat singing noises or just some of like the brass or the wind instruments, and you're just like, oh shit, something big's coming. There's a big moment here. And even when those moments are big and huge, it just lifts it even more. Like, I know epic is the word we keep throwing around here, but it just all goes together to just create this sense of scale that is just so unique, and I was all for it every step of the way. Benny, what else you wanted to add? Throw your thoughts in on these
just
talking
adding
points as
on
well.
to the voice cast and things like that. I think we need to give a special shout out to Danielle Pasuti for Freya, especially. Just
So
her
good.
performance is so good.
Mhm.
There's just especially at the start of the game, and there's no spoilers from here because I think it's pretty much in a trailer. But she's still on a path of revenge and everything like that. So just the sheer madness in her character and the performance that she gives is just incredible. And I think she's been snubbed for the Game of the Year. Not Game of the Year. What are
Game
they?
Awards?
Game Awards. Nods for the like best performance stuff. I think she got snubbed a little bit there, to be honest.
Otherwise, it'd end up being the entire cast. They got two in there. Two out of the five, I think.
And like two very deserving ones, but I think she got snubbed out a little bit there too, because I think she deserved to be there.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, and again, without spoiling the character that they play, Mina Sundwell, I really liked her performance as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you guys kind of already hit a lot of the nails on the head there. The only thing that, and we've already talked about Atreus being, you know, he just really gave me the shits. I was like, God damn it, this is not my Loki. Piss off, you little shit. There's so many moments I was like, fucking hell, shut up.
He wasn't that bad. Like, I've seen a lot of that on the Twitters, actually. Like, there has been a lot of people saying either shots directly towards Atreus or I wish you could mute the NPCs or your companions. That was what I was seeing a lot of. Especially
there's chunks in the early game when you're still looking for Tyr as well. He would just not shut up about Tyr, and maybe like because I'm trying not to spoil it, but the area that you're going through. So there's a door here. Maybe he's behind this door, and he says the same thing like 4 times, and like, Atreus, shut the fuck up.
He's just an excitable teenager. He's on an adventure. He's excited. Like, it was annoying, but I'm like, I didn't let that that hatred consume me. I'm just like, he's annoying, but like
I got
I'd probably
past it, but that one section when we're still searching for Tyr, and he's like, "Oh, what do you think's gonna happen?" And you're just like, "Dude, just chill, bro."
It's immersive.
Take a lesson from your old man.
That's the thing. Is like
be silent, be stoic.
Kratos.
I do like that part of this game though, right? Where the characters, you're having these interactions that aren't like linear discussions. It feels like yeah, they do trigger when you get to certain parts of the game, and a talking point will occur or a bit of banter between characters. But I like that it wasn't always just the same dozen lines recycled over and over. Like the sheer amount of voice work they must have recorded in the development of this game would be astounding, because there's so many discussions and so many little things where they just start talking about lore for this character or this thing that happened in history. And I loved it. I was just sitting back a few times, just listening to people go on tangents while you're rowing the boat or walking up a hill.
Number of times where you're sitting there on the boat or something like that, and you're at the dock, ready to get off, but they're talking a story. Then you're like, I just want to listen to this until the end. You're like, oh wow, it's actually quite long. Mm-hmm. Just on that note, like one of my favorite story, well, it's not really story beats, but one of like the famous favorite bits with the talking in between sections and when you're traveling, is Mimir trying to work out what Kratos' favorite riddle is. I won't spoil it, but that's like some of the best stuff, I think.
Mimir's a great companion.
Mimir
He's
would
so
have
good.
more lines than any other character in this game, I reckon, because it's just with you always.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
All right, let's shift gears, because we could sit here and talk about how great the voice work is for the next 7 days otherwise.
Yep.
But let's shift into sort of the gameplay, puzzles, combat, weapons, all of the above. Let's just throw it all in this Norse-shaped melting pot, and throw some non-spoiler related thoughts around. So JP, throwing the Leviathan next to you.
I liked that having multiple weapons as you do in the first game means that you're constantly unlocking new abilities and constantly mastering new abilities. And you might lean heavily onto a certain playstyle, then you get armor that is giving you an advantage in a different statistic or a different ability or a different area. So it kind of keeps you adapting and changing up your move set or your approach to combat, which is cool. And having companions that have different abilities as well. It's another wrinkle, and they just keep throwing these wrinkles in there to change things up. And I thought that compared to the first game, just going through with Atreus and his bow and arrow the whole time at your side, like there was so much more variety than that this time. As far as the gameplay, like God of War 2018 is a masterclass of I think combat and how it feels to wield a weapon and to feel powerful, and the sound design that accompanies those animations that makes it just feel so good. And it's certainly progressed in this game, like with the extra move sets that you have and the enemy variety. Like the first game, there was a lot of Draugr or zombie, whatever, Norse zombies to take out. They added so many more enemies this time around, and the boss fights as well. On top of that, the first game, it was a lot of trolls,
and they made fun of that early in the game about like, oh, there's no trolls around, like, and I pissed myself laughing at that because I'm like, yes, I love the meta-ness.
Yeah, the first game, it's like, how many times do you want to see a big wooden or a big like stone get driven into a troll's face in the death animation? And it's still pretty cool to watch, but after you've fought like an ice troll and a fire troll, like how many different kinds of trolls are they going to throw out there? This time around, the enemy variety was almost never, for a named boss, it was never the same multiple times, basically. Even the ones that looked similar had different approaches and fighting styles. So I thought that they did a fantastic job with that. And each of the story boss fights, again, it never felt like you knew exactly what to do when the fight started. You had to learn their rhythms and their different tendencies, and it just made it interesting and exciting to begin a boss fight. It was never like, oh, here's another one. So I think that they did a fantastic job with that, and tying the story into those fights always made them feel again, epic. So really take my hat off to the team with what they accomplished around that. The puzzle side of things, I think sometimes I actually felt like there was both too many puzzles and too much combat at certain points, where you sometimes you just wanted to explore or get through an area,
especially in the late game.
Yeah,
and we can maybe talk about it a bit more in the spoiler section, but the area that I'm up to at the moment, because there's not just one set of puzzles, it's like doubled due to reasons which we'll talk about later. But essentially, it's just doubling the workload.
Yeah, it can be a bit frustrating when you're trying to get to the next story beat, and it's like, slow down, stop, here's a puzzle. Not that you ever spend a really long time on a puzzle, because the NPCs will tell you how to solve it, which some people find annoying. I found it great because I don't want to spend any more time on a puzzle than I have to.
I like the ones where they're like, "Oh, you need to do this." And I'm like, "No shit, Sherlock, but how?"
Yeah. The puzzles. It felt like complete lockstep with you boys there, where it felt there was times where they were just shoehorning that in to pad it out a little bit more, or another wave of enemies where. Because these environments are so gorgeous in their own unique and diverse ways, there is just times where I just wanted to, just walk and experience these partners. Like, oh no, here's another wave of Draugr, or here's another wave of this random little creature that throws acid balls at me and whatever. I was like, piss off. Where do you keep coming from?
They're the ones that shooting the acid balls. Oh, I hated them so much.
Yeah. But the puzzles, I liked that the game could tell when you couldn't quite work out what you were doing. Yeah, you'd have your companion go, oh, hit that or do this. And then the penny would drop for me most of the times. I'm like, okay, thank you, because I've been running around here aimlessly for 2 minutes and I'm getting frustrated and I can't find the next step. But they were all the same, but ever so slightly different as well, the puzzles, which, I guess it's nice because it builds a little bit of muscle memory in you doing them. But at the same time, I wouldn't have minded a little bit more variety instead of just hitting a spin wheel to rotate a bit of wood across that I could then traverse, or freezing a cog. Maybe expand on that a little bit more, and they open up the world in other ways through other things in the game. But it's a very small loop as far as the puzzling goes. But the combat is so tight.
There are a lot of different puzzles, but they tend to clump them in different areas. So like Niflheim has the ones where you got to hit the 3 things with the same shot, and then you've got puzzles where you got to throw the axe off a surface to so they did vary it up, and I appreciate it.
Well, that's what I was gonna complain about. There's in terms of puzzles, there's these ones where it's not like you're having an aha moment to work out the solution. It's you have to either time it perfectly to hit the right angle or the right target at the right time, or B, you have to line it up so precise. There's one of those ones where you have to hit the 3 targets in a row at the same, in the one throw. There's one of them where it was actually you have to throw it and try and get it to hit the 3 targets on the way back when you're returning the axe. That one gave me the shits. I'm like, this is just annoying. I'm not enjoying this. I'm just annoyed. I got it eventually, 10, 15 minutes of trying to get it, but it was more annoying because it's I can see the solution. It's just a pain in the ass.
I think the big takeaway is a consensus here that there's a good amount of puzzles, but maybe less would be more. And
I never had an issue with any of the story puzzles. Well, I off the top of my head, from the main story puzzles, I don't think I had any issues with them. I solved them relatively quickly. They're all pretty fine. I think there's only one I'm thinking of where there's a couple of statues you have to move around the right way to get the reflective surfaces to line up, where that one kind of annoyed me a little bit. But I made my way through all that sort of stuff pretty quickly. It's the extra puzzles in the side quests and things like that. I think they're the more difficult ones. And the ones that are a little bit more time consuming, which is fine because, again, it's side quests. But at the same time, I'm saying that it's the ones where it's you've got to get your timing and your aim spot on that are just incredibly frustrating. And like that comes back down to like the Odin's Ravens as well. When they're flying around, you're trying to throw your axe at the ravens.
Yeah, throw all them in the bin. Those stupid green birds. I'm done with them.
Like you'd see one and you're walking past in a story mission. You're like, oh, I'm just going to get this raven real quick, and then you'd spend like 5 minutes trying to line up your shot perfectly with this raven.
Throw them all away.
Yeah, so
stupid birds.
That sort of stuff is just more frustrating than fun. Like, puzzles are fun. That sort of other stuff, though, is just frustrating.
Yeah, the core gameplay loop of, go to this realm, get to this point to talk to this character or get this item, fight a heap of baddies on the way, solve some puzzles, it's a fun loop. I enjoyed my time about going to a realm, work my way through, having a cool, unique boss battle at the end, then having a little bit more of a story recap afterwards and learning more of this world or this character or the situation surrounding the impending Ragnarok and all that, which is cool.
Yeah.
But I think it's added to that experience so much more with the combat and the weapons. Like there's a nice variety of weaponry in Kratos and Atreus' hands. And like JP was saying earlier, when you are introduced to a new enemy archetype or a boss battle, I just naturally, like, I'm in my head, I'm like, I'm the God of War. I don't take a back step. I'm running in here swinging my axe. And that does not work because you get cut down so quick. I died a lot in this game because my ego of just thinking I can just swing my way to success here is impossible, especially with the boss battles, because they hit hard and they hit fast and they hit often.
Some of them are unexpected
boss
battles too. Like you're not even really thinking that they're a full boss battle. And you're just like, oh yeah, this is kind of like a mini boss sort of thing. But you've just been kicking ass for the last 5-10 minutes, just destroying everything that comes your way. And then you find this little mini boss, or like there's one little room or something like that, and you're like, all of a sudden you're getting your ass handed to you. You're like, what the hell happened in the last 2 minutes? Like the combat balance is completely out of whack. I will say, just quickly, because we are throwing a little bit of shade at the game here, this is all nitpicky stuff because the game is that fucking good. It is excellent. So we're being very nitpicky, I think, as well.
Yeah, the combat's great. The combat's super tight. And like I mentioned it earlier in this episode, like comparing it to Elden Ring, and it goes that way with the boss battles too, where you've got to watch their movement, watch how they attack, learn to parry, learn when to, push in or step back. And it just adds another layer to this game instead of it just being a mindless button masher. Like that's the way you just envision Kratos to play. But in this, you got to have some tact, use the shield, roll around, counter when you need to, and, time those big hits. Otherwise you go down because, that normal difficulty, it did feel like normal at times for me. I was getting smoked, but then I learned to just breathe a little bit and make
it's always just like slow down, patience, judge, like, predict their movements, and that's when like kind of the matrix appears and you can just kind of pick it apart.
I'll tell you what though, my butthole clenched up pretty big though. Every time I'd see the red ring, like the unblockable move coming your way, and especially when it's a first time and you don't know what it's going to be, you're just like, oh no, do I die here? Do I die here? Do I die here? And you just roll around.
You try to do a roll or something, and then it's like a delayed attack too, so you've timed it completely wrong, and then your whole health bar is gone.
Yeah, but it's tough. But the combat's great. It's visceral and it's rewarding. And I love being able to click R3 to do sort of the finishing moves on some of these enemies where you are cutting them in half, you're cutting their heads off, you're cutting them through the jaw, where you're fighting like the wargs, like the werewolf things, and you're ripping like half their face and chest off, like with your bare hands. Like, holy moly, it is nuts, but it's so great. Yeah, it's the best. It was always my hero moment, but it doesn't lessen the game. Like they're not trying to hide flaws by making it gory and shock value. No. Like it's rewarding and it serves a purpose because it's tough out there. Like there is impending doom and the stakes are huge and you're fighting your way with every axe swing or every swing of your blades of chaos, and I couldn't be more for it.
I have to give credit to the controls for this game as well. I actually think like they made use of every button on that DualSense, and I played a lot on the backbone, like turning my phone into the controller.
Yeah, the mobile controller adapter.
Just because I've been sick and got a kid and stuff. So it's a credit to both the backbone and the control scheme that I was able to like go into a boss fight, usually playing mobile, you'd be like, I got no chance, like having the responsiveness and everything to get through this. But I was able to play a lot of the game with that, and it went really well.
Were you streaming from your PS5 to your phone to play on the
Yes.
backbone?
And it was so smooth.
God damn.
Yeah, it runs good, man. It runs good.
So good, yeah. I got the iPhone 13, and it was just like, it just felt like I was playing back on the Vita like the old days. It was amazing, and internet's way better now than when I used to stream back then. So really good, yeah. And the other thing I wanted to just throw in while we're talking about gameplay is the accessibility options. I added the one that picks up the power-ups.
Automatic
and that
pickups.
was so handy, especially in boss fights. You can just kind of walk over it and not think about all that.
Why did I not think about turning this on? Because I struggled with this so much.
Turn it on. It is so worthwhile having that
God.
on.
It's in my
because I didn't have it on originally, and it gave me
the
the shit. So I'm like, going back and finding that setting. I'm turning it back on. I made all pickups automatic.
Yeah.
With the best part
I
about
feel so stupid because I didn't turn that on, and I struggled because there's times when you've got a bee's dick of health left, and you've got to roll or try and run or strafe your way to that health potion or that health pickup, and you get sniped by some projectile, or because I can't hit X in the right space. Because I remap my X and circle buttons. Just with how my brain works with certain games, I like.
Because
I like
I was
roll
actually
with
finding
B.
that too. Because I would have preferred the circle to be like my dodge button too. But
So I remap those, but I stupidly didn't turn on just walk over like auto collect pickups. That would have saved me so much pain.
I mean, he still does the stomp animation, so you're still vulnerable, but you get it makes it picking up so much easier. My favorite part about automatic pickups, though, is when you defeat a large enemy and there's a nice little waterfall of like items to pick up, and then all of a sudden you got Kratos there doing like bobbing, like he's basically teabagging the items, or trying to pick everything up.
Oh God, I'm so dumb. Why didn't I think of going in there? There's like 200 accessibility options. I didn't look. All I did was remap X and circle.
Yeah, it's definitely worthwhile checking out the accessibility options because some of them just make life so much easier. I didn't turn it on but there's the one for quick time events where you got to tap the. I usually tap circle. I
did that too. I turned that one on.
You
just
do
hold
whatever.
it. I'm too old to be sitting here going like tapping on my controller. I just hold down the button.
Yeah, I was pretty much at that point where I was just I'm going to turn that on. I still haven't, but I've turned it on in other games. It makes life so much easier.
No, I was tapping. I was tapping like the best of them. I was tapping and also picking up my pickups like a pleb manually. So I am very ashamed. But something I'm not ashamed of is the presentation of this game. Like the graphics and performance, it is god tier, one might say. Pardon the horrible pun, but it is very, very, very impressive. It's one of the best looking games I've ever seen, and that's irrespective of console or PC. The fact that this was made for not only the PlayStation 5, but the PlayStation 4 is very respectable. Yeah. But I'm just in awe of just the scope of this game, the polish of the environments, the fluidity of the combat, the character models, the emotion and the emoting that they were able to show during these big moments. And there was a couple little minor texture pops here or there, nothing too game breaking. I didn't have any hard crashes, any freezes. My game ran silky smooth for that 32 and a half hours. But I am still just scratching my head at the sorcery of just this single camera shot that Santa Monica have put together, where transitioning from cut screen or cut scene, to in-game to back and forth with no load times, apart from when you die and it's got to reload in, is just next level design work. Like the development team behind that is a bunch of wizards, and I'm just constantly blown away by just seeing these seamless, flawless transitions done with no degradation to the image quality, going from a cutscene back to gameplay and vice versa. Like all the chef's kisses, all the hat tips, all the things for everyone at Santa Monica to put that together, because it is some god tier-esque development.
I'm less impressed by it because let me
you.
say, like the
JP.
The amount of times you had to squeeze through a narrow gap or crawl under something, like they're obviously masking some
the hidden
loading times, and that's something that's become commonplace in the PS4/PS5 generation. Like Final Fantasy VII Remake is a really good example. Tons of those moments of just...
It's a good time to have a sip of a drink or catch your breath or check your phone.
Yeah. And, you know, running around the fast travel portal world, like, it's better than the loading screen, I'll say that, but it still just makes me think, what would this game have looked like if it was just made for the PS5? How many people... I'm really interested to see how many people buy it on the PS4. How does it run on the PS4? I don't even know. But
I've heard it runs really well on the PS4. I mean, it sounds like a jet engine on a PS4 Pro, but apparently it runs really well on the PS4.
Yeah,
so.
Digital Foundry did some benchmarking on it. They said it ran well, but like Benny just said, it is making every use of every inch of the fans in the PS4 to keep it from blowing up. But it's just COVID, man. The fact that there's component shortages and supply shortages, so the amount of, like, there's a bucket load of PS5s out in the world today, but not as many as they'd like. So they had to sort of straddle both lines.
100 million PS4s out in the wild. So
yeah,
that's a pretty big install base.
I think they'll sell a lot of PS5s for this game, but the other thing I wanted to mention was just what was that freaking? Sorry.
You just want to talk more smack about the crawling through the little caverns or stepping over a little ledge?
I remember it now. Cutscenes, amazing. In-game dialogue, not so amazing, and you don't really see it because it's this third-person perspective camera where their faces aren't ever right up in the view. But if you do swing the camera around so that you get a close up of someone's face when they're talking, it's very like budget and like PS3 kind of, or even like Andromeda style mouth movements that aren't perfect, and that's just like there's so much dialogue in this game, they can't perfectly sync up every single moment where half the time Kratos is, you're looking at the back of his head. So why would they spend heaps of money making his mouth move perfectly to it? It makes sense. But yeah, it is there.
I actually just want to piggyback onto that just really quickly. And it's not so much the in-world stuff, but it's actually in cutscene stuff that really bothered me. Is Thor. Every time, well, pretty much most of the times throughout the game, and I'm going to avoid spoilers here, but the interactions with Thor, the camera seems to be behind Thor's head.
Or his hair covers his face. And his
hair covers his face, so you actually never get any of that performance. Like, you can hear his voice, and it sounds like a really emotive performance. And there's a really specific one, which we can talk about later in the spoilers section.
Cost cutting.
But I was just like, I want to see his face in this moment, because this is a really great story moment. And that's actually something, and again, we're getting into nitpicky stuff because the rest of this game is so very good. But it was just one of those things where you just reminded me, it's like, this is cutscene level stuff, and I don't even get to see the characters speaking and having this emotional moments.
Yeah, there's some missed opportunities there, I think. But like we've sort of talked about, because this cast is so huge, comes probably down to a mixture of cost and time, and they had to make a few sacrifices here or there. But outside of Jono's blatant disregard for the beauty of crawling through spaces or stepping under logs and things, or giant rocks,
thanks.
Yeah, you gotta respect the strength of Kratos, and that's like, it's a throwaway nitpick, but I just want to say I find it funny that he can lift rocks like that and smashes doors down sometimes, but when he gets to certain puzzle doors, it's, sorry bro, I gotta turn this cog or knock this round. It's like, no, you should just be able to smash all the doors.
Oh, yeah, and there's the doors there that he basically just lifts up, but you can only lift it from one side, but there's actually nothing there stopping it from being lifted. Like, you'd think there'd be a lock or something.
Magic door.
Exactly, yeah. So, I don't know, there's just some of those are... But the other thing is, it's like, okay, so you can like run around, you're the super god, all this sort of stuff, but you can't even do a little jump over this rock.
Like, that's video games for you. Otherwise, you could just jump straight to Asgard or something.
Walls, yeah. There's certain levels of disbelief you have to put into video games, as we all know. So yeah, but sometimes you're just sitting there going, "Come on, man, just jump the freaking ledge."
Yeah, we are getting very, very nitpicky here as far as throwing some shade. Like, this game doesn't deserve any major gripes or issues, but maybe we could sort of jump into some of the minor, or maybe some of those little bugbears that we have with the game from a non-spoiler perspective, and then maybe we can give our closing spoiler-free thoughts and then jump into spoilers. So, JP, Benny, I think we've got some similarities here with some of the nitpicks and gripes. I'm just going to quickly rattle mine off bullet point style. I'm not going to go into any depths. One thing is, the stakes, like from a narrative and storytelling perspective, they're high. It's constantly discussed with this, in air quotes, family of yours and the characters you're dealing with. But the fact that there isn't a strong sense of urgency when you are just casually cruising around, and then you do a big mission and you complete that quest, and then Mimir or Atreus are like, we don't have to go and do the next thing just now. Let's just go explore this. Yeah. It's like, the whole 9 realms are at stake here, but it's like, no, man, let's go find that random dwarf's hammer instead. Like, YOLO. So I had a chuckle about that. No photo mode at launch. Like, I was screenshotting like a demon during my gameplay session, and I got some really nice shots, but it would be nice to have the photo mode to get rid of the subline at the bottom there.
Actually, I'd like a photo mode as well, just so there's some of the wildlife in some of the worlds are so cute. So very
super cute.
There's the little turtle with the palm tree on its back, on its shell.
I think it's definitely coming in a very near future patch, that's for sure. We talked about it earlier with some of the stories and discussions being limited to the boat rides. Like, that annoys me. Like, what's the difference about having being in a boat or your feet on the ground? Like, Kratos, the second he gets out of the boat, he's like, we can do that later. It's like, no, bro, don't cut me off mid story here. Like, Mimir's on a hot one right now. Let him finish. And then the other part we already mentioned is, try and hit some of those ravens. Throw them all in the bin.
Yep.
Just get good, Brent.
Benny, what do you got?
Get good, son.
I try.
You kind of hit it with the stakes being high. It's the opening levels I found, and looking back, they like tracking down Tyr at the start. I felt like that dragged on a bit. And maybe this is just a personal thing, is because it wasn't until after meeting Tyr and everything that I felt that the game found a sense of urgency, if that makes sense. And it was kind of just resting on the fact that the first game, and again, personal opinion, so I found that it's like resting on the fact that the first game was so good, and the expectations that the player really enjoyed the first game would push through a lot of the rigmarole to get to the Tyr moment when you meet him and everything like that. Because when I look back, and even now as I'm saying this and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, shit, I had to do this, and then I had to do this, and then I had to do this, and I had to do this, and I had to do this, and I had to do this before I got to that Tyr moment. So like, this actually wasn't really a whole lot of story progression between the opening moments to going to that first realm and then finding Tyr. There's a whole chunk of just wandering around trying to get to that. It's like, it's a long trek.
It's just adventure time.
Yeah, pretty much. And there's even during that, there's a moment where they say, oh, we've got a bit of time. We can just go do this other side quest while we're here too.
I do appreciate, though, when you do sort of veer off the linear path to a sort of a goal in a mission, and like your companions are there and they're like, he does this sometimes. You just go and looking for treasure and stuff. I like the self-awareness of the game to put those little voice lines in, and it just so adds to being a real living, breathing world, which I really admire.
This guy is obsessed with treasure. What's
yeah. Doing the side quests as well, like, you do get rewarded for it. Like, and there's like early ones where you're on the dwarven, tracking down the rigs and things like that, and you actually get a good set of really good early game set of armor from doing all that too. So,
yeah. What about you, JP? What's a couple of
that lack of urgency is definitely there. Where we're talking about end times and Ragnarok and Asgard and all these really big important things, but it's kind of like, but I just got access to this whole area, so I'll just explore it and do everything. And it's kind of at odds with the narrative, and they did the best they could to try and make it make sense with saying, you know, oh, I'm sure that so and so can wait, or you know, it's not gonna matter whether we take, you know, an extra day or whatever it is. So they were aware of that kind of contrast and tried to address it, but it did get to the point. You know, I played more of that stuff than obviously you, Brendan. But even for me, it got to the point towards the end of the game where I was like, oh, I just opened this new area with a side quest, but I feel like it would suck me out of the immersion to just take off and rescue this one person when I should be trying to, you know, save the world or whatever it is. So that kind of that is a nitpick, but it's certainly something that matters. Something that is a bit more significant to the experience of playing is, I think, the map and the compass in this game are both terrible. The compass, you kind of I figured out as time went on, but it just seemed sometimes I'd have my location dead ahead of me, and it would just bounce around like it was, you know, on crack or something. It was very hyped up.
Over the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, it was like it was a Bermuda Triangle everywhere I went.
I had one of those recently where I was tracking down an object. It was actually today when I was tracking down one of the like end game objectives, and I was like, I know it's up here. I just put the compass on. I was like, but it's telling me to go over this to the left, but I know it's actually dead ahead and then very slightly to the left. But it's telling me I need to go absolutely dead on left. And the other thing, like you said about the map, is it's like, I don't think the overworld map's accurate at all.
Well, it's just hard.
Especially
it's
in
also just
chunks.
really hard to read. The icons aren't clear.
Yeah.
You can't zoom in close enough for it to be useful. It's a very like top far away view. I don't know why you can't just zoom in further.
And there's a couple of spots where there's like a lot of icons all in one spot, especially any of the sections where you've got boats.
Yeah.
Because it brings up all the landings as spots for the boats as well. It's just
and
like,
talk about
it's just the map
that issue that you just mentioned about like slightly to the left, the compass tells you to go east or whatever. You know, put that together with you're in a boat that doesn't have like a easy turning circle, and you're just constantly pressing the menu button, scrolling over to the map. Am I going the right way? Oh, it's actually the other way. I did that so often, and you could say that that's on me, but I'm going to say that it's on the game. So, sorry, I said it. There's also a pretty significant glitch that has affected a lot of people that I found in the end game. I was fighting, you know, the first game had Valkyries. I'm not going to say exactly what they are in this game, but there's some challenging bosses, and there was two of them in one fight. I don't know if you've come across this one yet. And
no, I've come across the one that's got 3.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there's these two characters that I'm fighting, and I was like, I'm not having as much fun anymore. I thought I would bump it down to the story mode and just see how that goes. And you couldn't. I just couldn't change the difficulty. You change the difficulty, you hit, you know, X, and it would restart from the last checkpoint, and it would put you back on the normal difficulty that I used for the whole game.
Oh, shit.
And it's affecting a lot of people, and there's such random workarounds to get it to work, where you got to, like, save and then go over here and exit the game and then jump back in and, you know, new save file and change the setting and press these 2 buttons instead of X. And it's like, this is a really simple thing that, even from an accessibility point of view, like, you've gone above and beyond to add all these features, but then you can't change it to easy because of a glitch. Like that's I think definitely worth a criticism for sure.
Taking words directly out of your mouth from maybe 90 seconds ago, Jono, you just got to get good.
Yeah. I beat a good chunk of those things before I came across that one.
I know the exact fight you're talking about, and it was tough. It was very tough.
I haven't done that one yet. I actually, the one I got was 3. It's just.
Are you talking about the one part of the main story?
No. This is one of the you know, the hilt things.
Oh, okay.
No, not the one that's part of the Ragnarok section. No, not that. Yeah.
Okay.
No. It was a different one.
Oh no, that one was that one's.
I didn't find any of the story boss fights crazy difficult, really.
There was one that annoyed me. It wasn't difficult, it was just annoying, and we'll talk about that in spoiler territory, because talking about it would be a massive spoiler.
Yeah, that's it. So let's sort of look to close this spoiler-free part off, and we'll give some final spoiler-free thoughts. I'll just quickly say, yeah, this game blew me away in every aspect. I genuinely thought that the 2018 God of War release was a perfect game, but I feel Ragnarok is better than that in all facets. Like, it is a huge, impressive beast of a game, and I adored my time with it, and I'm looking forward to going back and cleaning more of the map up and doing some endgame content and tying up a few loose ends. And I'm giving it the big old stamp of approval. Like, it's definitely an 8-bit approved game, and it's going to be on a lot of Game of the Year lists, and rightfully so. But Leviathan Axe. Benny, what's your final spoiler-free thoughts?
We kind of talked about how the game is a little bit on the longer side, but I personally didn't find that it was too long. But I found that it's very easy, and we've talked about the urgency and everything like that. So I found like getting sidetracked on it was a little too easy to do, and especially when you're like myself, you just go, "Ooh, shiny! What's that?"
I was about to say, I've played enough co-op shared world games
exactly.
to know that no matter where the shiny thing is, you're going to go looking for it, and then you're going to see if
there's a secret. I've got to go find that secret.
And then that item you find on the secret, you'll go, okay, does it balance my armor set or my weapon by 1 point? Then you'll and ah on that for a while, and then you'll re-roll. And so I know that this game would have taken you down a few rabbit holes.
It took me quite a few rabbit holes, more than enough rabbit holes, to be honest. But like it, and again, I can't stress this enough. The game is deceptively huge. You don't notice it right away, and you're playing through the game, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And even these locations which you've already been to in the game, you're like, oh yeah, you're just going back here to do it, and you discover this whole brand new section of the game that didn't exist there before. You're like, where the hell did this come from? Like, it just keeps getting it. Blows me away, the scope and size in this game every time I think about it. And yes, 8-bit approved 100%, and I didn't go into this game thinking it would be on my Game of the Year list, but it sure as shit is.
God, haters all around me here in the Riverside FM stream today. JP, close out our spoiler-free section here with your thoughts. Good lad.
This is my Game of the Year. It's not, I'm going to say it's not even close. And I did love Horizon, Forbidden West, and it does some things better. But overall, the experience of playing plus the narrative that's achieved here, it's far above and beyond anything else that I've played this year. Plague Tale, narrative-wise, has probably had some similar emotion attached to it, but this combined with the gameplay, the combat, the amount of things there are to do and variety of things. It's not just going hunting and killing. Like it's like almost like a Red Dead level, activity. So many activities to take part in.
Ironically enough, 2018 beat out Red Dead for Game of the Year back then too. So.
But yeah, I mean, it does have that issue, like I call it the Last of Us Part 2 issue of being possibly too long and longer than you thought and dragging in particular sections. But as I probably said in 2020, when it's this good, it doesn't matter. Like it's a masterpiece. There's no other way to describe it. And for some people that won't work for them. I can see some people taking a month or more to get through the 40 or 50 hours, especially if they have a personality that's like, I have to do everything in this area before I can leave, have to get every Odin's Raven, have to figure out how to get to that chest. It is frustrating when you really want to get something and then you realize you don't have the ability and it's a Metroidvania and you start stressing like, am I going to remember to come back here? Is the game going to send me to this exact spot? But,
Yep, there's several chests where I sat there going, I can see it. How do I get to it?
Yes.
Don't show me something if I can't get to it.
To let it go, but yeah.
I can't let it go, Jono.
I guess my point is, it's, the game's so good, and people, if you're listening to this without having played it or with interest in it, just obviously play it already.
100%. Like, if you're a Sony owner, you're doing yourself a big old disservice by not picking up God of War Ragnarok. And, it would be beneficial for you to get the full emotional payoff by playing the 2018 release, but there is a nice
100%.
video recap right in the home screen of Ragnarok. It doesn't cover everything, but it gives you a little bit of a helicopter overview, couple of minute little banger just to give you the main beats from the 2018 game, so then you can dive into Ragnarok, because my God, it's special. And it's funny that, like, 3 of my favorite games of the year are all to do, with the relationship of family, like Plague Tale Requiem, Horizon Forbidden West, and God of War Ragnarok, all got like heavy roots and acknowledgements to family and what that means. So I think Vin Diesel would be very, very proud of gaming in 2022. But listeners, that brings us to the end of the spoiler-free part of God of War Ragnarok Spoilercast. So if you haven't finished the game yet or haven't played it and you don't want anything spoilt, I would hit pause on the episode right now. Go do what you got to do and come back when you're comfortable to hear things potentially spoilt and shared with you in a very unfiltered way. But yeah, listeners, the spoiler-free part is over and we are jumping right across into...
Full spoilers ahead.
All right, listeners, I'll give you the super quick compressed recap. Obviously, this covers but a pittance of the overall God of War Ragnarok story. We've grabbed some hit points from around the internet, and the story goes as follows. 3 years after God of War 2018, Kratos and Atreus are living the hunter's life in Midgard, evading Freya's vengeance. Atreus can now shapeshift into animals and is learning to control his powers. Then they're visited by Odin and Thor early in the game, and that's where Ragnarok's story really starts to pick up from there. They've realized that they need to go and rescue Tyr, and then Atreus becomes a playable character, exploring with Sindri to learn about his heritage as a giant and visiting Freya to seek forgiveness. From there, Atreus goes to Jotunheim and meets with Angerboda. Midway through God of War Ragnarok, Kratos and Freya reconcile while Atreus goes to Asgard. Ooh. Kratos visits the Norns, the sisters of fate in Norse mythology. Kratos then kills Heimdall. Ragnarok's huge twist. Tyr is actually revealed to be Odin in disguise all along. Shocker! Ragnarok then begins and Odin dies. From there, Kratos and Atreus survive. And then we get God of War Ragnarok's ending. And then it pivots nicely into endgame content where Atreus has decided to go off and sort of find more of his hiding giant brethren. And you're then riding shotgun with Freya and Kratos to go just heal the world. Make it a better place, as Michael Jackson once said.
I was going to bring up that.
That is the very scattershot, very compressed recap of the God of War story. Let's jump right on in here, boys, and talk our favorite / biggest moments in the game. JP, do you want to steer this ship here?
Sure. So for me, I think, apart from the teary farewell to Fenrir at the beginning of the game, the big moment to kind of start things off was meeting Odin and Thor at the humble little hut, which was foreshadowed shot for shot in the end, like the secret ending of the first game.
Yeah, I just want to actually question that. So was the secret ending from the first game supposed to be like a dream? This is a question I was asking myself while playing. It's like, hang on, did they already meet Thor from the end of the first game at the secret ending to the first game?
Yeah, I think that they referenced it being just like the dream. So, yeah,
okay,
because it's obviously 3 years later.
That was my point. It's like, well, hang on, haven't you already met Thor? I thought you got...
Yeah, but
I don't know. Maybe that was just my interpretation.
I really enjoyed that little, almost Tarantino-esque kind of tension-building moment of them sitting down, drinking together. Is things going to pop off or are things not going to pop off? And obviously they do pop off.
And Odin surprising everyone by asking for peace.
Yeah.
And the cool part in that fight, though, is where Thor pretty much kills Kratos, then brings him back to life. It goes back to the load screen and he pulls you back in like full meta. And I was just like, what is going on here? We're breaking fourth walls. What is happening?
Yeah, it's very cool. And Odin being this like older, not a physically foreboding presence, this kind of more behind the scenes conniving political leader. I really liked the way that they cast and designed his look to kind of have Thor as his muscle. So yeah, I thought that was cool, and it gave us it was basically the follow up to the fight with the stranger in the first game, where it's like, oh, this is something special. Like, it's that moment where if you haven't played the game before, you go, this is the kind of epic scale we're talking about with these fights. We got like a frozen lightning bolt. Like, it's all happening here. It's right off the bat.
Yeah, the Leviathan axe and Mjolnir clashing together to create the frozen lightning bolt was pretty freaking cool.
It was so metal. It was so metal. And
that should be a heavy metal album cover.
Oh yeah, like it just set the tone early. Like that opening scene and then that battle, I'm just like, oh my god, like this is how it starts. Where are we gonna go? And it didn't let us down from there. And I just love, like you guys said, the portrayal and just the sort of altering of Odin. Like, yeah, he's not this big imposing super god. He's this meek little mafioso looking boss that feels like he got pressured into getting some face tattoos to try and be cool. And then Thor's just his muscle. But even Thor, he isn't like just this physically fit piece of granite. Like, he's a large man. He's fat boy strong. And I love that about it. And Ryan Hurst and his delivery as Thor, and then obviously Richard Schiff as Odin, they're just a great chalk and cheese as far as one's well-spoken, one's gruff and drunk most of the time and very broken, and Odin's very book-smart. And I think they play off each other. And then also the discussions with Atreus and Kratos and Freya really, really well.
Yep. So playing as Atreus was... I never thought about it, but it's super obvious once it started happening. I was like, oh, they're doing it.
Yeah, I had that moment when like the camera's panning away. So like, hang on, are we gonna play as Atreus here? It's leading us to, and then sure enough, you jumped out and sneaks out the window. It's like, I'm controlling Atreus. Oh shit, we're changing.
It's
okay.
a very
and you get a lot of playtime with Atreus too.
Oh yeah,
possibly too much, but we'll get to that later.
But
yeah, that's like a very PlayStation thing to do. Like, if you look at a lot of like, especially The Last of Us and some of those games where characters that start off as side characters become main characters. So it was just good to get that variation, and you know, it progresses like, oh, it's not just exploration. You've got this whole other skill set of attacks and skill trees to fill out and populate. So that was kind of cool just to see that they were going in that direction. And then as Atreus, getting to see Jotunheim and Asgard as locations and to explore those places. Two locations that we really didn't get to see much of or any of in the first game, but we knew that they existed. So to see how things work in those realms, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I thought Benny was jumping in there. No, I like that. And yeah, it was a pleasant surprise playing as Atreus. I liked that he played and felt different to Kratos, where Kratos is more slow and powerful and just big hits. Like, he does obviously chain some mad combos together very swiftly, but Atreus is very light on his feet and he's rolling around and he's more ranged as opposed to frontline assault. And it just sort of made the game feel a little bit fresh. I agree that maybe we could have done for a few hours less of Atreus playtime there, but overall it felt good, and it sort of just gave us two games in one to a degree almost, where it felt like you were playing a completely different class and a character, and sort of seeing this young man become his own and become a man throughout the story was really touching. Like, he sort of grows up right in front of our eyes and becomes less of a dick. Like you were saying in the spoiler free section, you couldn't stand him a lot of the time, but I think maybe by the end of it and sort of seeing his emotional journey and growth, you're probably like, yeah, you know what?
He does get a lot better, but there's still like a lot of moments, especially in the early on moments when like you first go to Asgard, essentially, and things like that. I was finding it's like, oh gosh, he's still an arrogant little shit. I think he gets humbled, and it's not until after he goes to Helheim with Thrud and Heimdall that, and you know, accidentally releases Garm.
Yeah.
You know, that humbles him a lot, and that's when the character, and it's an old, and Jono could probably speak more on this himself, but like, it's an old writing technique of make the character kind of annoying and something, so when they redeem themselves, you feel more you like them a lot more when they actually.
That's it. The
themselves.
payoff's a lot bigger, and that's it. Like when I guess you're a teenager that's half god and
Exactly.
has all these powers,
half god, half giant.
Yeah.
The responsibility of an entire race of people on your shoulder.
Yeah, you'd have a bit of ego about you. And there's times where he's just conversing with characters and he's feeling like he's larger than life. He's like, you know what, Bugger, I'm just going to go in there. I'm going to whoop that guy. I'm going to do this. Like he feels very bulletproof, but then he has makes a few wrong decisions and causes people to get hurt and drama to unfold. And it humbles him. And I really, I liked that he got a full sort of character development throughout the game.
Yeah, and that's if they hadn't given that full character development, like it wouldn't have been worth it. I think thankfully they did pay that off. If there was no payoff there, it could have really soured the whole game.
100%.
So I'm glad that they spent some time making sure that the writers got that all correct.
Yeah, they like I can only imagine the size of the storyboards they had and just the planning and plotting out the character arcs and the developments and where they wanted to take it from a micro and a broader level, and they nailed it. They knew the brief and they stuck to it and they hit it out of the park, that's for sure. And sort of in that early piece when you do control Atreus and you go on your little stealth missions and trying to find that information, seeing Jormungandr again, the giant sort of spiritual snake, the world serpent, is so cool. Like that's one of my favorite characters in these two games. Like he doesn't get, or they or she, I don't know what sex Jormungandr is, but this world serpent, it doesn't get a ton of airtime in this, but that moment early on just really, really set me on the right track because it's just such a cool character and it's such a cool model.
He had such a cool character moment in 2018 as well. Like because the first time you go out into the Lake of Nine, it's all covered in fog and it's mysterious and things like that. And then Jormungandr pops up because I can't remember exactly how it goes on, but Jormungandr comes then and all that sort of stuff and reveals, and then all of a sudden the fog clears away and it's just a giant snake. And then each time you talk to Jormungandr, the world changes again. So he has this huge impact on Midgard in that point. And not a lot less so in this time, where they all he does is he creates one pathway for you, but it calls back to 2018 a little bit where you interact with Jormungandr and a path opens up essentially for you to move forward. So it's so cool seeing the snake come back.
Yeah, it was a good throwback, and getting to go back to such a pivotal moment in the 2018 game.
Such a pivotal location as well. Like the Lake of Nine has changed so very much. Like you get back there, the world's, because obviously Fimbulwinter's completely changed the landscape, so the lake's all frozen over. The opening battle with Thor has destroyed Tyr's statue on top of his temple, so as Atreus, you're crawling through I think it's like his shoulder or something at the start there. But as you explore the Lake of Nine later on, you realize how like chunks of the statue are everywhere. Essentially, it's actually a side mission to go and visit every chunk. But and then obviously he goes and tries to make peace with Freya as well. So, which again, and that's where I mentioned earlier, Danielle's performance as Freya is so very good because you can just see the madness and heartbreak in the character.
Yeah, she was phenomenal on screen. Like she's the broken, grieving mother, and dealing with the hatred that Kratos and Atreus killed her son. In the 2018 game, and she's still coming to terms with that, and the fact that she had her choice removed.
That too, and they killed her son to save her life.
Yeah. I think they did a really good job of capturing her side of that story, where in the first game I was just like, she's being so irrational, she's just being like a crazy lady or whatever. But this time around I was like, if my son was trying to kill me, I would prefer that he kill me than you kill my son. Like I can kind of understand that.
Do you think your perspective's changed on that now that you're a parent yourself?
That specific thing, I don't know. I haven't really thought that much about it. But yeah, like I can definitely understand someone being like, no, like even if my son has gone crazy and is trying to attack me, I don't want to see harm come to him. I would rather die than their life end. So like, you know, throw in the fact that they're gods and stuff, and obviously there's like all these other complications. But yeah, like they did a really good job. Like that actor that you mentioned for her, like she did such an amazing job of walking that line between like, am I going to kill you or am I going to forgive you? And the kind of journey that she went on as a character with Kratos when they're making their way through through her home land for being back there for the first time, like, and then fighting the Nidhogg. Yeah, like that was that was pretty crazy. And you know, the fact that they made amends there, and then she becomes basically the second NPC companion for the majority of the game from there on. Like that's a pretty big shake up.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit jarring, and it's not noticeable straight away. But I don't know how you guys progress the story here, but after the whole Nidhogg thing, and then you go back and you go and you basically go back to Freya's camp and all that sort of stuff and everything like that. You get a chance to go back to the Sindri's house, the Realm Between Realms. I actually just went down the River Delta and started exploring, and you find the three waterfalls where she had the marriage ceremony.
I did that straight away as well, and that was really, really powerful.
It was really, really powerful stuff. But at the same time, as I'm exploring, like there's the conversations in the boats and things like that are happening. That I was finding is like, hang on. Half an hour ago, you were willing to just rip me throat out. Like, you hated my guts. Every single word I said to you was like nails on a chalkboard. And now you're basically buddy-buddy with me almost. And there was a couple of moments, and I think, and again, we're being nitpicky about stuff, or I'm being nitpicky about stuff, because the game is that good. You kind of just be nitpicky about things. But it was something I noticed that it just felt very jarring to me. It was like, you were willing to kill me not too long ago, and you've forgiven me, but all that anger is just literally washed away. Like, there isn't any remnants
I didn't mind that, because I think they did a pretty good job of framing it as, like, it's actually Odin that she's angry at, and she was taking it out on Kratos. So once she kind of had that mind shift, all of the positives in seeing things from Kratos' perspective came back, and the fact that they did have a friendship prior to that, and that they had the same goal, and Kratos they did a really great job with that, of making it seem possible for them to reach that place where he was sharing about his past, and they're having all these little moments together. Where I'm really glad I watched like a God of War recap where I learnt this before they talked about it, but how Kratos was tricked into killing his first wife and his first daughter in the earlier games, and that was such a...
I like that when they were leading towards the Nidhogg, and he explains to, like, she goes, oh, you wouldn't know what it's like to lose a child. He goes, I actually do. Yeah, so
there's...
and then tells her about his daughter. And
there was a lot of cool little moments where in the boat they'd be talking about, you know, tell me about your homeland, and tell me about, like, is it true that, you know, the gods in your homeland were X, Y, and Z? So it was interesting to see those kinds of conversations take place between Mimir and Freya and Kratos, and the fun dynamic that you have in the shit, because there's a lot of history between, especially Mimir and Freya as well.
Yeah, it's nice because they all get there's a lot of redemption going on with a lot of characters in this game. There's a lot of remorsefulness. There's a lot of apologies, especially Mimir. Like, as you're taking him on the tour of the Nine Realms, he's apologizing to so many characters about, sorry, I am the smartest man or the smartest head in the universe. My bad for ruining this for your people, or doing this or that, or killing that. You know, like, it's a lot of apologies on his press junket, but It's great because it's reflective for not only you as the player, but these characters, and seeing them grow, and they're all very damaged. You know, they're all flawed characters. No one's perfect in this world, and that's from both the protagonist and an antagonist perspective. But you can also then empathize with both sides of that coin too, which I like. One of the parts that sort of follow on after that sort of making peace with Freya section is you're spending a bit more time with Atreus, and you meet Angerboda, who is this other young half-giant girl, and just seeing these two interact with one another, and like this is probably, you know, Atreus is like it's a crush, you know, he's got a crush on this girl, and seeing this relationship sort of awkwardly develop as they're exploring and doing menial tasks and, you know, going to catch some fruit.
Did this like activate your little weeb factor where you love your little rom-com?
I just love, all right? Listeners, co-hosts, I love. And anytime there is like some emotional cuteness in any form of media I consume, I'm just like, my heart is overflowing and I'm smiling, and I know some of those menial tasks will bleed into some nitpicks or least favorite moments for y'all, but like, I was all about it. I'm like, I don't want this little section to end. I like that it was like stress-free, and it was just sort of a bit of a sort of exploration of this relationship and this friendship and whatever else is developing here, and just seeing it unfold. Like, there is a few little combat parts, but it is mostly just cruising around, talking, unveiling some things about one another. Yeah, meeting the crazy giant unhinged grandmother, which is awesome. Like, that was very Disney-esque for me, that whole scenario
climbing
there.
the giant steps and stuff.
Yeah, like, it's
That's
so
like
great.
A Studio Ghibli kind of thing to me. Yeah.
It's and I like that there is some of these borderline comical, like cutesy family parts of the game, like where, you know, it is hyper violent and stressful and emotional, but there is some lighthearted sections that sort of make you breathe and go, this is nice. I'm not just sad the whole time. I'm happy or laughing. And yeah, that whole interaction with Angerboda, and she follows on in future interactions with Atreus, and then obviously meets Kratos later on. I love it. She's such a cute little character, and the lady that handles her work, Leia DeLeon Hayes, hat tip to you, young lady. You crushed that role, and yeah, I was all for it, and yeah, more of that. Give me some Angerboda and Atreus, or Angerboda and Loki spin-off romance sequel game, and I will buy it day one and play the shit out of it, where I'm just, you know, mending their house and feeding their creatures, and, you know, let's go Animal Crossing or Farmville or whatever, you know, any of those types of games with these two as the leads, I'm in. I'm paying money straight up.
Thrud comes to visit.
I'm down. I'm so down. I love that part. What did you guys think? I know, like I mentioned, you're a bit annoyed with some of the non-events in that game, in that section where you're, you know, riding a creature and picking fruit.
It was just a bit
what do you think?
too long. Like, that was one of those moments where I
it
was
dragged
like,
on.
It was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, like, not only you've taken me away from Kratos, but you've taken me out of combat, and I love a slower section and the pacing, and that's very important, but it just went a lot longer than I expected it and wanted it to. And when it was just riding the yak around in the water and picking fruit
in a circle in the swamp,
and to follow that up, there was a section where you're going into these really dark caves and having to destroy the nests, and it was so dark and dim, and I couldn't remember where I'd been, and that section took me way longer than I wanted it to. So I was very much like, get me back to.
Turn up the brightness on your TV, Jono.
Yeah. Get me back to Kratos at that point. Yeah. This kid
so good.
Trying to hold hands with this girl.
I was all for it. It's cute.
Actually, I haven't been back to Jotunheim yet in the end game. I'm wondering if Kratos comes across Granny and they have a big fight. And
I don't think you can go back.
You can go back to Jotunheim.
I thought that was one of those places.
In the end game, you can, because you get the seeds from Radagast, so you can go back to every world.
Shout out to the random spectral squirrel gods tree mender green thumb. Like that ties into that more lighthearted Studio Ghibli Disney comedic section where you're dealing with this sentient spectral squirrel. Like it's great, but it's just so weird.
You got bitter squirrel and anxious squirrel.
Yeah,
and what was the other one? There's like, I can't remember now. There's the red one, which is like helping you hunt down the stags.
Yeah, it just changes the tone so like it was jarring at first, I think, because I can't remember like the lead up to meeting said squirrel, but then like it went from like I think a big emotional moment to then like, hey, I've just stepped into the new Pixar film all of a sudden. What in the Christ name is going on? But then I settled in and appreciated it, and I liked that it sort of was moments where I could sort of breathe. And
really
relax a
well
little bit
voiced
more.
by Sung-won Cho, who you probably know from a bunch of different anime and stuff, but he did a really good job as the squirrel. Can't remember his name, Rat something. Yeah, Ratakaska. I love ringing that bell even when he was already there.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Yeah. What's the next piece you want to sort of cover off as far as favorite moments, JP?
So I mentioned this before about like getting to see Asgard, but actually getting there, climbing the wall, like meeting the dude outside who is a Midgardian and seeing like this other side of how things work.
His name's Skolder, or
Skolder.
something.
That was really cool because I was like, okay, this is the first time, apart from like a glimpse of dwarves in Svartalfheim where they kind of hide away as you arrive, but this is the first time we've seen an actual community in any of the God of War, like 2018 or this one, and then to get into Asgard and see like there's Valkyries training and there's all these enemies that I've been killing, but now they're just chilling, and it's weird to just like see them not attack me. It was cool to see like the way that world and that realm operates, and obviously that's where you meet Thrud and Kif and some very attractive Asgardians. It's it was a
I like when you get to the top of the wall there and you
yes,
meet
that
Heimdall,
part too, yeah.
who's a dick. That's actually a really cool interaction between the two of them, but I like especially once you actually get on top of the wall and he's leading you over to the little elevator thing to take you down to meet Odin, essentially. There's like, I think it's like the whatever the currency is that you can pick up. Yeah, the hack silver. There's like, you pick that up and he goes, oh, you first get allowed into some place and the first thing you do is you steal from them.
Made me chuckle.
Yeah. I had a little laugh at that one.
Yeah. So yeah, I just thought like seeing Asgard after all that build up was quite cool. And then like all these moments where, oh, maybe Odin's not such a bad guy. Obviously he is. But yeah, just to it was kind of that like to reference a great movie from the 90s. It's like when Peter Pan's kid Jack goes with Captain Hook, and you're like, is he gonna get sucked into live in the Hook lifestyle?
Oh, and he did. He did. Loved it.
Anyway, so that was my thoughts on Asgard.
Run home, Jack. Run home, Jack. Great film, by the way. Dustin Hoffman as Hook.
Yeah.
Legendary performance. And what's the name? Glenn Close as the random male pirate that gets thrown into the chest with the scorpions.
Yep. Good call.
One of the first gender bends, I think, in sort of mainstream films, like for kids. So, hat tip to that. All right, next one, JP. What you got?
The next one I had written down. Well, I this was one that Benny added. I think was
I actually wrote this one down. Yeah, so it's like Atreus' reconciliation with Kratos after the events in Helheim. Because you come back from Helheim, everyone in Asgard's like mad at you, essentially, and all that sort of stuff. So you make your way back to the realm between realms, and then everyone's there fighting, and because Helheim's going crazy because Garm's on the loose and all that sort of stuff, and the fight ends, and basically the first thing that happens between Kratos and Atreus is they just embrace each other in this big father-son hug. That was a really, really good moment because he's like, yes, some shit's happened, but you're my son, you're okay, and I love you, and that's all that matters to me. That was, I just think that was a really, really good moment.
I agree. Yeah. And for those that can't remember who Garm is, that is the giant wolf that can create realm tears and sort of create all kinds of chaos and carnage and unpredictability between realms where people are crossing over, and hence why we're seeing so many evil creatures once Garm's roaming around. But it was a really nice moment. It was one of the many that made my bottom lip quiver. Anytime I'd see those beautiful father-son moments with Atreus and Kratos was just my feels. They were very tender.
It was cool because it was in really interesting contrast to the previous time that Atreus went home when he returned from Jotunheim, and he goes to step through the portal, and he walks straight into Kratos, who's like waiting for him, and he's like, "Oh no, this kid's in trouble! Like,
You're
he's gonna
in
get
trouble."
sent straight to his room or whatever." But knowing what's happened while he's been gone from the other side, where Kratos is worried. Yeah, he's worried sick about him. He's went and got dropped near the spear. That's probably the next thing we should talk about is the quest to get that spear. When you meet the mermaid, the lady of the forge, and finally get that spear. That was a pretty sweet moment, like from a gameplay perspective. But then the moment where Kratos asks Brock to give the blessing over the spear, for some reason that really got me. It kind of made Brock into for lack of a better term, like human. Like it made him a human character with actual emotions and feelings, not just comic relief, which he's been by and large up until this point.
He has some zingers too. My God, some of the things he says, I was pissing myself laughing like audibly with some of the little one-liners and abusive things he'd throw at people. It was
the
top
first
tier.
time he sees Atreus, and he's just like, "What the hell is that?"
It's so good. But yeah, so that whole drop near spear, you're getting that because it's a god-killing weapon. Because at that time, Atreus has gone to Asgard, and Kratos and Freya and Tyr and everyone else are like, what are we going to do? We need to have a plan to get to Asgard to get him back and ultimately take down Heimdall and Thor and Odin and all the bad Norse gods. So they're going to get this spear. And that whole section is great. And I love the sort of interactions with the mermaid, and that moment of realization for Brock when he realizes that he isn't who he thinks he is for all intents and purposes. Sindri brought him back from the dead, but didn't get all pieces of his soul to make him a whole person. And it was so touching, and just his little interaction with Kratos in that moment as well was beautiful. But then getting that spear and running roughshod with that weapon was fucking sick.
Yeah, the spear's so good.
The spear is a lot of fun.
It's obviously got like some limitations when you first get it because you haven't unlocked the skill tree. But once that thing's charged up, powered up, it wrecks roughshod. It's pretty handy.
Yeah, cover dudes with bloody spear jabs and then explode them all in one hit, and it's like, great for interrupts. Great little trick. So if you're fighting any dudes, if you throw the spear, get enough spears in them, and they go to do their red attack, and you can't dodge it in time, just hold down triangle.
Yeah, nice. did they actually explain what it is about the spear that makes it unpredictable to Heimdall?
Maybe to do with that mythical ring. I'm guessing they don't really sort of unpack what the ring was made of, but it was just a magic.
There's references a few times to it, and like Mimir talks about it a couple of times, but I think it's more along the lines of that, like Heimdall's not expecting it to behave the way it is.
It's more unpredictable.
That's the only thing I can really pin it down to, especially considering it can multiplicate itself or duplicate.
We'll just say
itself.
it's God
what
magic.
It seems like they went
God
with.
magic.
Yeah, Wizard did it.
Which probably we should seg straight into the Heimdall fight. So I thought that one was really fun because we'd obviously seen how powerful he was when Atreus tries to fight him, but to actually do that, and I think that's the moment that you're breaking the prophecy. Is it the first time that you go outside of what's been prophesied? So it's fairly significant in that it sets off this chain of events that aren't known or aren't written in murals.
Yeah, it's and this is the fight I was talking about earlier in terms of boss fights, where I found, because it's kind of almost a little bit of a puzzle that you have to work out inside the boss fight as to, okay, how do I get Heimdall to the point where I can actually damage him? Because he is predicting everything.
Yeah. Roll or parry at the right time, and that's the only way you can really do some clap damage to him. But I was a bit sad that it was a cool fight. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, once the fight actually properly kicks off, but that first few moments when you're using the spear just to try and hit him and things like that, I remember the first time I threw the spear at him and he caught it, so I exploded it while he had it in his hand. So I was like, bang, there we go, I got some damage. Okay, I'll keep repeating this. Okay, no, he's learnt that. All right, how do I do it? Oh, all the spears that are on the ground, I explode them when he's standing near them, and then that's eventually I got the stuns again.
The best part about that whole fight, I think, was just the realization that Kratos was having near the end when he's like, stop, no more fighting.
Yeah.
And Heimdall's like, I'll never stop. And like after, impales his arm against the wall, and then Kratos having that moment of realization where he's like, the only way I'm going to stop you, Heimdall, is by killing you. And then thus bringing on Ragnarok. And it was cool. I was all for it, and I loved it. And the sort of portrayal of Heimdall was great because he was just a prick. But it was so good. Like Scott Porter, who handled him, the voice work was bang on, and he's just that smarky asshole that no one likes, but he's always the coolest guy in the room, even though he's a dick. And
very different
it was
to Idris Elba, isn't he?
Yeah, very different to Idris Elba. Yeah, doesn't have slick long hair. Oh, he had hair in like a little sort of top knot style going on, but that was always the funny thing that I kept comparing this game and the Marvel Norse gods a lot, where I'm like, that's not the Thor I usually know, or that's not the Odin I know. Like, where's Sir Anthony Hopkins? Where's he at the moment and stuff? So it was kind of cool to reset that mental imagery that I had there. But that Heimdall fight was really good. And something else that sort of followed not too far in and around that sort of main story beat was where you are going back to deal with Garm after the scenario in Helheim, and you're back with Atreus and Kratos, and you're there, and you use your dagger that actually has your poor wolf Fenrir that you that passed away right near the opening sort of scenes of the game.
First 10 minutes, and they make you cry about your dead dog. The bastards.
Yeah, it broke my heart, as this game did many times. But then seeing his spirit then implanted into Garm, and then you've just got this giant wolf pet that is just beautiful and so cute. And I was playing that, and I was cuddling Bentley and Winston so much through a lot of these moments.
I just loved it straight away. He goes, sit. He's like, good boy.
What did you guys think of leading up to that, though? You kill Garm, and that's like a really sad moment until he comes back to life and tries to kill you again.
He's a tough son of a gun. Like, that fight was sick. And
that was a good fight.
Was tough.
That was an awesome fight. And then, the fact that you finish him off, you're like, oh man, I wish it didn't have to be that way. And then you leave, and then, oh shit, he's alive again. Oh fuck him. Yeah,
there's some really sad moments like that where earlier we skipped over it, but when you free the turtle and it just doesn't. Is it a turtle? That big animal anyway.
I think it's a big turtle. It reminded me of Torterra from Pokemon.
Yeah. Do you know what we're talking about, Benny?
No, you've lost me. Which turtle?
Mimir captured that turtle.
Oh,
thing.
Oh no, it's a whale. It's a whale because they're using the whale. They're using the whale oil, like the fat to make oil.
Yeah. Anyway, you free the whale, but it doesn't leave. It's quite sad. It's still there at the end. But they know how to tug on our heartstrings, and it's through animals. Yeah,
with giant animals.
So the next thing that I wrote down, and this was just pure fun, was the tavern brawl, where you go into recruit Thor and he's drunk off his face, and you just end up destroying this whole place.
It was super fun playing as Atreus, and just seeing, because when you walk into this fighters bar or whatever, you've got to leave your weapons at the door, so you're weaponless at first, so you've got to time some counters by pressing square or X or circle, whatever the mapping to the button was. And then you get your arrows and your quiver and your bow again, and you're fighting in there, and just seeing Thor flying around, or you're mid-fight, and then Mjolnir just goes boom and smashes a guy's head to pieces beside you, and Atreus at first is he's shocked because aren't they you guys? And they're they'll just be reincarnated again soon. They're already dead. Don't worry.
Thrud's don't worry about it.
They'll go back to Valhalla and circle back home again. It's all good. And it was such a change of pace from the main story, and just seeing the broken man that is Thor is great. Ryan Hurst crushes it in that role, and that scene was super fun and enjoyable and humorous. But also crazy violent.
This kind of harkens back to what I was saying earlier about every time Thor's in a scene, you get these emotional scenes, but you don't see his face. This is another one where I'm pretty sure the camera was from behind Thor looking at Thrud instead, and you get Thrud's reactions, but you don't see a lot of Thor's, and it's kind of really bothering me that you're not seeing a lot of the facial capture for Thor, unfortunately.
It was great though. It was super fun.
It's so good. It's this father-daughter relationship between the two of them as well. It's just this beautiful thing. And he's just him feeling like he's let her down and all this sort of stuff again.
Yeah, but even that family in general, like even Lady Sif, seeing her as the doting parent and very concerned and worried for Thrud, who wants to become a Valkyrie, but like they're always like, no, it's not for you. But then at the end when they have that moment, they're like, we have no doubt you're going to be the best Valkyrie the Nine Realms has ever seen and all that. Very touching, very, very nice to see. Something that wasn't touching, but I want to know, did you guys see this coming? Like the Tyr's betrayal, obviously.
No.
Tyr's been part of the family for a long time, and you're literally breaking bread and having stew around the table like a big dysfunctional family, which is cute as shit. I love those moments at Sindri's house.
I will say, Tyr was pissing me off. I was like, what are you? Like,
yeah, it's supposed to be a God of War.
Like you're like a pacifist or something. Like you should be violent and helpful. I also felt like his voice casting was didn't quite match his physical appearance. He had like this high voice and American accent, and it just I expected him being 8'9" to have like a very deep voice, and it went against that, and it didn't.
There's only room for one deep voice in this cast, mate. They're like, nah, Christopher Judd, he owns that. He's got the patent on deep and low octaves in Ragnarok. No one else. But I'm with you. Like the voice didn't match the imposing figure, but I think it's also like for the game, like he's a broken man. He's very against war. Yeah, he's a pacifist now. Even when the fight's breaking out at Sindri's house, he runs out with a shield. It's not with a sword or an axe or whatever to protect anybody.
He even comes back. He says, "Oh, he shouldn't have come out with a shield." It's literally this betrayal moment. He goes, "Oh, I shouldn't come out with a shield," and then Brock lets him have it.
Yeah, you feel before the betrayal moment that he's going to have this big hero moment when the Battle of Asgard actually takes place, but then they're like, joke's on you. Rug gets pulled out from under you, and it's like, I'm Odin, motherfuckers. I've been playing tricks on you the whole time. I know your stories. I know what you've been up to because I've been here
secret from the
since
bloody,
the start.
Yeah, the secret.
I didn't see it coming.
Bloody
no way.
Thing and all this sort of stuff. Yeah,
I did not see it coming, and then Odin stabs Brock. Kills Brock in this big moment, but yeah, I didn't predict the Tyr to Odin shift at all. I did not see it telegraphed anywhere. So hat tip to Santa Monica for keeping that one very, very under the table.
I guess I didn't know that Odin could do that. Really, I mean, it didn't surprise me once I knew that he had that ability. But in the moment, it's just like, oh, that's a thing that can happen, and it just did.
Yeah. I think it's more surprising because they're under the assumption is that he couldn't get into that realm, but obviously because they brought him in, he set himself up with a raven there so he could transport to and from.
Maybe it's like vampire law. Because they invited him in, he was now able to go freely. But that was one of the biggest moments of the entire game. And I was just like, what the hell? Like jaw drop. And then seeing poor old Brock.
It made me angry and really wanted me to kill Odin as well, because I was like, you son of a bitch. I want to get you now for that.
I'll tell you what, too, that moment made Sindri very angry. He is a broken, angry little dwarf, and he hates everybody now, and I'm wondering where that might go in the future, if they play on that a little bit more, or if there's some DLC or a future game where he might become a bit of an antagonist, a bit of a foil to our leads.
Next game you play as Sindri, it's him taking his vengeance upon the giants.
Yeah, who knows? It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a bit of a villain arc there for Sindri, because he's broken after saying goodbye to Brock for a second time and not being able to bring him back this time as well. So yeah, and then another big moment leading up to the final big battle at Asgard. There is where you are creating Ragnarok. You go to the fire realm. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I'm blanking. Muspelheim. Why couldn't it just be Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra or something? Some of the wording, like, I get it. I know I'm a bogan, but it is what it is. But yeah, convincing Suda who is the fire giant there to help bring around Ragnarok. That moment's really cool. And then going through that situation where he doesn't want to, because he has to combine with his beloved, who's another giant that's in one of the other realms in hiding. He doesn't want to combine with her because it will mean the end of her. So he sacrifices himself in a way and gets creative with the Blades of Chaos, does some more, god magic to make it happen. And it's just a really cool moment where you are in this like a multiverse-esque dreamscape going on, and you're in amongst the space and the stars, and it's really cool. It's a really, really funky bit of environment that's unlike everything else in the game.
Yeah, the moment where you're like, oh, this is it. This is happening. This is Ragnarok. Like, that's pretty insane. And the visual, like the reds and blues of that place, it was very like, I don't know, Endgame, Guardians of the Galaxy. There was something about that was just very spacey and sci-fi cool. Yeah.
I really dug that, like, that zone, essentially, that you go into is really, really cool. It's just really cool, the whole jamming the daggers into the heart thing. That was just, I found that whole spot there really just awesome moment. It's kind of a shame that you don't spend any more time with that character or anything like that. Like, if there wasn't anything else prior to that, even if it was like something from, say, 2018's God of War or something like that, that kind of gave you a little bit more attachment to that character. But that said, this game's so huge. Like, how much extra do we need to chuck in there?
Yeah, it was cool. It was, I think he setting that moment up was probably just the right amount of time. The battle with those two Valkyries, though, in that moment, like you guys were saying, it was pretty easy peasy, but clearly I needed to get good because I did it in the second go around, but the first one, it was tough because they kept, recharging their health and whatever else, and I'm like, come on, rinse, repeat, piss off with this nonsense. Let me just fight you to the death one time.
Oh, maybe because I'm just an asshole and I throw the axe every chance I get. I wasn't letting them recharge. And
I can't remember if that was one where I went into it with half health, so I might have just quickly died so they could get the full health and then had no problems. But
oh, I know what it is. I've got the relic where you shoot out like the 3 bolts of Bifrost. So I use that to like do interrupts and things like that. And so and the wolves that Atreus has, that you can summon the pack of wolves. That was really, really powerful. I'm kind of pissed I don't have that in the game to fight the berserkers, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was getting smacked around there, and that also was stressing me out because I had to press the X button to pick up the healing items instead of just auto collecting them. So it was. I had a few boss fights in this game where it got to the end where it was like either they hit me first and I'm dead, or I hit them first here and they're dead. Like, we both had a tiny little pittance left, and that bloody Jewel Valkyrie one was one of it, but it was sick. And then also, equally as sick or as awesome or as radical as the kids might say, is that final siege where you are bringing all the realms together to do battle against Asgard. Clearly, a lot of those other realms can't really fight to save their life because they're getting whooped straight off the bat. Like, all these armies are like, yeah, we're reuniting all the people. It's going to be awesome. Then you're like, well, that gate's down. They're all dead. That gate's down. Now it's just me and an axe.
Yep. And then Sindri comes along and he whoops ass.
It did have that endgame kind of feel of like, it's all in, like everyone's here, but it didn't feel like you were in on the battlefield. It was like, it felt like you were a one-man army and other people were elsewhere doing their thing.
And I think that was, it was a misstep too leading up to that where he's like, all right, Freya, I'll be your general. And he has this big speech, but it's in front of like 5 people. Like, he should have had that speech somehow like broadcast across the realms through space television or something. I don't know. But like, he was like this big, like, we're going to do this. But it was in front of like his son, his pseudo potentially future third wife. I don't know what'll happen there. And a couple of Valkyries. I'm like, it's cool, but I want this big grand scale. And we didn't get it in that battle to the level I was hoping for.
Yeah. And that music, those 3 notes again, so good.
Just gets the tip tingling every single time, boys.
And the
every
music
single
in that
time.
siege as well, even if it wasn't as epic as it could have been, like the music itself was so good to push you through it.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it was very, very special. Like, can't speak highly enough of the work that Bear McCreary did composing that. So it was awesome. Any other sort of favorite moments, big moments we wanted to sort of throw there? We've got one I think that's going to be probably synonymous with this whole experience with that father-son bond.
Continuing on that final siege, it was that I guess that the final sequence of fighting Thor, having Thor decide.
Thor decides to turn against Odin.
And even like the moment
again, another scene where it's like, I should be seeing Thor's face here.
And then just prior to that, the moment where Thrud and Sif decided that they were going to allow you to pass through because they were on your side.
Yeah, because Sif's seeing all the Midgardians getting hurt and things like that, so she decides that, no, this has gone on too far.
Yeah, and then, destroying the mask and Odin, fighting Odin, and Sindri being the one to, kind of flagged, what's the word, foreshadowed earlier with Heimdall, where he just would refuse to, wave the white flag, and Kratos, or I guess in this time it was Atreus that gave him a chance to say, I yield and this will be the end of it. And he said, basically, I'll never stop. And Atreus says something like, I wish he didn't say that. And then takes his soul.
So he captures him in one of his giant magic marbles. And then Atreus and Kratos hand that marble to Freya because they don't want to take the choice away from her. This is her this is her vengeance, or this is her healing moment that they think she might need to become whole again and move forward. But then she realizes that killing him's not going to make things any better. So she lets it go, and there's a pause, and they think that marble's just going to go into the old marble sack. And then Sindri goes, not on my watch, grabs it and smashes it with his magical hammer, and Odin is dead and shattered into a million pieces. It was a cool moment. I loved it. I love that sort of, no, I'm good. There's enough killing. I'm healing here. And then Frey did the same, but Sindri said, no.
I appreciate that it gave Kratos, Atreus, and Freya their closure and moments of, we're the bigger person, or however you might want to look at it. And then Sindri, who's still very much in grief and mourning and experiencing the loss of his brother. He's just like, my arc isn't finished yet. Bang. I'm just getting started.
Yeah. It was so great. And it makes me wonder what's going to happen down the line with that character, because he looks, it's getting very Schmeagol, Gollum sort of vibe going on Lord of the Rings, where he's now on a tear, and
especially when you start getting into the endgame stuff and you go to Brock's funeral, and you get essentially the second ending with the second roll credits, and even after that, Sindri's still wearing the same armor, the blood's, Brock's blood's still splattered all over it, the sleeve's still torn and everything from the fight at Ragnarok. He is a broken man, and even after the funeral, he's just the same. He's still broken. He doesn't forgive anyone yet.
So I'm curious to see what happens there.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. And any other moments we want to sort of throw out, or should we maybe flip that script and look at some negative stuff?
The other endgame moment is if you go back to Alfheim, outside the canyons there, you get a nice little touching moment with Thrud and the hammer, and saying that to her dad that I'll do you proud, essentially, and then picks up the hammer and then just flies off into the sky. All Thor style. So that's actually just another really cool little moment.
There's a few nice little endgame moments like that make it worth exploring. Yeah. So let's get into the gripes. There's obviously more about the ending that we're going to talk about, but we'll get some negative stuff out of the way first.
Yeah. I'm going to just scattershot mine here. The picking fruit from when you're just rowing around in the boat, which is a different picking fruit that you guys mentioned earlier, that irked me. And the other part that's my gripe really is just through my own idiocy, and it was trying to interact with those green health orbs during very tense combat-based scenes, it
I
was
understand
often a
your
struggle.
frustrations because I didn't have that feature turned on either at the start, and I turned it on later because it was annoying the crap out of me because I remembered it.
Yeah,
So,
I did not have that turned on at all, but shame on me because I'm an idiot. But there's some minor gripes because just made my playthrough a little bit more difficult and stressful than it needed to be. So, Jono, you've probably got the biggest list here regarding least favorite moments and gripes. So, come on, Negative Nelly. How about you?
So, I mentioned like the dragging sections. That was mostly just the yak and the fruit in Jotunheim. But there was a couple other points where it felt like the momentum of this journey was being sucked out by side quests, and we've talked about that enough. I don't need to go into it.
Yeah.
There's something that I'm calling the Sophia issue, and that's a throwback to our last spoiler cast on Plague Tale Requiem, where you had this badass character walking alongside you who refused to engage in any combat, and it felt like that they were finding ways to reduce the amount of AI and processing they had to do by coming up with reasons that, okay, first Tyr's not going to fight because he's a pacifist. So all these times...
Well, really,
all these times Tyr's with you,
yeah.
he's not going to do anything. He's just going to be there, even though he's a god of war. And then you've got Thor with you, and Thor's like, I'm not going to do anything because I'm Thor, and I will just watch you do it.
But then occasionally he just goes, you know what, I'm bored or I'm sobering up.
Yeah.
And he just like swings that hammer once and just badoosh.
Yeah.
And there's just death and destruction everywhere. I love that.
Occasionally. But there was a few times that, and then also with Freya, she turns into the eagle or whatever. And it's like, okay, they're just removing one of the companions from battle. I get that it's a game dev thing, but it was just a little transparent. It would have been fun to see more than just two characters fighting at once. But anyway, as we said, it's a nitpick. The Ragnarok itself, it was such a epic thing to, to create this monster by shoving the blades into this dude's heart. And then he kind of was a non-factor. He was just kind of a distraction. It's like, actually, we don't want you to wreck Roughshot. We want you to sit back because you're causing too much damage. And then it's going to take Freya, not Freya, but Freyr, out of the equation for this whole sequence. And it was undone just so easily with, well, I guess it was a sacrifice of Freya's life to somehow end it. But
No, they didn't end it. Like, it still happened. Like, the whole Ragnarok thing was
like
Asgard
Asgard's
always...
gone.
Asgard is perishing, but Freyr sacrificed himself to allow them enough time to get through the realm portal that Agraboda opened.
Okay, so
up.
Ragnarok's still happening, but only in Asgard.
Well, it's happened. So Asgard, done.
Because that was the whole thing. So when they went to the temple in Alfheim the first time with Tyr, who they discovered the prophecy's not about Ragnarok destroying all the realms. It just destroys Asgard.
Right. Yep.
Hence, and then obviously because Odin's Tyr, Odin learns that fact at the same time as the audience and our heroes.
Okay, I'll retract that then. That makes sense. Just confused me a little bit. The one story thing that I had a bit of an issue with and thought they could have done a little bit more with was, for a good chunk of this game, the focus is on these prophecies and the idea of avoiding the prophecy. Even going back to 2018, we see Kratos dead. That's the thing that it's building towards, and that's what Loki wants to avoid.
But we assume it's Kratos that's dead.
We do.
It's actually Odin lying in Loki's arms, as per at the end scene where he's casting the spell to suck his soul out and put it into the marble.
Is that obvious, or is that
No, it's not super obvious. I looked into it and I went back a little bit on it as well. But yeah, that's where it is. Because you look at it and it's literally, an old man, it's not actually showing that it's Kratos. It's just an old dude with a beard.
Right.
I do love that those magical paintings that foretell the future, like they're like a single, like, you know, a pane from a comic book, like, and there's not a ton of detail, but like people are able to interpret them to such a level that this is happening and you're dying and you're this, and it's like that could be any Joe Schmo.
The ones where they're showing like, oh, it's Tyr leading the armies, blah blah blah, and all this sort of stuff. This is like an early one before they find Tyr, and like there's a god standing there with a spear. It's like, well, hang on. You actually get a spear during the game. So it's Kratos it's a god of war that's leading the army with a spear. It's not Tyr, it's another.
See, all that stuff's really cool, but I think that they didn't do a good job of emphasizing it, explaining it, but also playing with your expectations, where after Heimdall was killed by Kratos, I never got a moment where it was like, is Kratos going to die? And for the whole 35 hours before the final sequence, which happened at 42 hours for me, my whole expectation was Kratos can't die, but it's going to be interesting how they make us think that that's going to happen and then they avoid it, because that's the prophecy and that's what Atreus is here to try and avoid. But everything he's done has brought upon what he was trying to avoid. It's that whole Hamlet, like, self-fulfilling prophecy thing. So how is Kratos going to die and get revived? Is he going to get saved right at the last minute? And it's going to become this huge thing of like, oh, your destiny isn't sealed because we've avoided the prophecy at the last second. And I really thought that it was going there. And I don't have an issue with the fact that they went in a different direction, but I just thought they would make more of it or reference it. But it was kind of like, they just threw the prophecies out the window at a certain point, and they never even went like, oh, I guess the prophecies aren't true.
Yeah. I think they could have done a little bit more to explain like where the differences were, what happens is and the prophecies are. Especially
when Angrboda was like, you can't beat the prophecy, like it's going to happen. Like she said that explicitly when you went to Jotunheim, and then half the stuff didn't seem to happen.
It didn't take much for her to just change the tune and go, you know what? This is just like reading a horoscope. It's all you interpret it as you will. I can write my own
ending, you know. Just
like I'm 12. What do I know?
But like the one thing I was just going to say is that there was like I found like me as the audience, I didn't feel like Kratos was going to die, but I think Kratos. There's the moment before, like the night before they go to Ragnarok, essentially when they're sleeping in the tent. He tells Atreus' story, and I think he thinks in his mind that he's still going to die at the end of this.
I thought he was going to die. I thought they were going to kill him off at the end.
I knew they wouldn't, because there was so much stuff that I hadn't done yet in the end game.
Yeah, well, that was part of what my thinking was. Like, how the fuck do I finish this game?
I was like, they're not giving the Blades of Chaos to Atreus. They're not gonna do a Red Dead Redemption on me.
No, I thought that's exactly where they were going to go. Was I
thought they might, but I was like, I don't know about that. But yeah.
Anyway, that was something that I wish they handled a little differently. Not that I have an overall issue with where they went. It's just these kind of hanging threads that weren't closed off. I'm mixing my metaphors here, but you know, they didn't address all the things that I felt popped up throughout the story, especially, you know, maybe they were red herrings, but they didn't really emphasize if they were.
Well, I think you're right. They could have emphasized a little bit more if they were red herrings and like gave some more explanation on them. And maybe that's something they should be doing more in the end game when you're running around with Freya and Mimir. Because I don't think I've found that so much through Freya and Mimir. I've just found it from like reading what other people have said online, essentially. Sure. So yeah, it's just one of those things where I think they could have explained that a little bit better, at least in the end game storytelling. In using that travel storytelling that they do so very well during the rest of the game as well.
Yeah, well, let's sort of shift to that end game and the ending and what we can hypothesize about what's next for this franchise. Is this one and done after these two games? Is there a third one on the way? What do we think may or may not happen? I thought for sure, Kratos was gonna die. And Atreus would become the focal point, and he could still become the focal point of this franchise, whether it be renamed to something else, because obviously Atreus is not God of War, but I feel there may be another time jump again where maybe we get, 20-something Atreus doing his thing and you get a game with that, whether it be a third game in this sort of current series, disregarding obviously all the other games that came before it. We're just talking 2018 onwards. But I feel we've got a third one on there. Maybe we do get more of this heroic Kratos. Obviously, on that last vision board that Angrbodas shows him, and he looks on the back of it, and Kratos is finally getting worshipped, because that's one thing that's a constant through this game, where Kratos never has any followers. Everyone's terrified of the God of War. He's a bad dude for the most part. But that final panel on that door when it opens up is a group of people worshipping him. So maybe we do get a third one where he's just still building the Nine Realms back up and uniting the people and whatever else. But I personally feel we're probably going to get Atreus maybe taking more of a lead in this role. Like the roles will be reversed, where you might still have some stuff with Kratos, but Atreus will be front and center moving forward if they do make a third game in this series.
Yeah, well, Balrog's already come out saying it's a duology, essentially. This God of War is, at least anyway.
The Norse era, like they've said on the record that this is the last of the Norse games, and that makes sense because like there's every loose end apart from the lack of the prophecies being completely fulfilled has been tied off as far as like who's the threat now.
Yeah, so I mean it kind of forebode a little bit to being they've hinted at Egypt a few times. Just with 2018, there's references to the Nile and stuff like that in Tyr's Temple. In this one, I found an artifact which was from what they call it. I think they called it the Riverlands or something, which I'm assuming they're referencing to the Nile in Egypt there. So there's sort of that ancient mythology with ancient Egypt and things like that there that could potentially be spun off on. And I think there's also references to some sort of Asian mythology from Tyr's Temple in 2018 version as well. So maybe that's where they could go, whether that's with Kratos or with Atreus / Loki, whichever way you want to go with it. I'm not entirely sure, but that would be my assumption. Given the strength of this franchise and how well, especially 2018 and this game have done, from a critical standpoint, as well as let's face it, these games are making money hand over fist. Sony's going to want another one. They're going to want another one eventually. Whether it's another 5 years from now or not, I don't know. But they're going to want another God of War because they know it's going to make money.
Oh, yeah. Like 23 million copies the 2018 game sold. And this one, they were saying in the first sort of couple of weeks of sale out data, this is trending in a direction to potentially usurp that in the coming years.
How many people got a free copy of 2018's God of War thanks to PlayStation? What's the one that called it when you buy the PS5? You get access
Plus
to the
collection.
You get a version there, and then PlayStation Plus now you can play it for free. I use quotation marks for that. But yeah, so there's a lot of other people that will get access to this game and be exposed to it in varying ways too. So it's
one of the biggest IPs in the world. Like they'd be silly not to try and get more blood out of this stone.
What was it, a Prime Video, Netflix, whichever one it is? They're making a show for this one as well. So I wouldn't be surprised. They have to be announcing something within the next several years that there's another game, God of War, coming.
I think,
and I'm not sad about it. Would you be sad about it, JP?
I have a curiosity of what Sony Santa Monica could do outside of this, because that's just...
I kind of hope they do something different.
Yeah, I mean, that's
personally.
like the thing with these big studios. Like, I love The Last of Us, and I love The Last of Us Part 2, and I'm going to love Factions. But what could Naughty Dog do if they weren't making an Uncharted or a Last of Us game? Like, that's such a mystery and curiosity. Like, I'd love to see what else they have up their sleeves.
You look at Guerrilla, they did Killzone and went from Killzone to Horizon, and it's the same thing. I know there's a podcast, I can't remember where I heard, I think it was Kind of Funny or something, but they were saying that, Guerrilla, or before they really kicked off into God of War, they had a cancelled sci-fi game that they were working on too. Maybe they could revisit that, like a sci-fi game for Santa Monica that, that Corey could be working on or leading. That's very story based.
They said they're working on like multiple different games at the moment already.
Corey's the director of some other game. We know that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'd like to see Santa Monica do something different first and release something different first.
Yeah, I think that'll be. Yeah, I think that's probably the plan. I've had to guess, like in the same way that it feels like Naughty Dog have gone into the Last of Us direction, and they will come back and do an Uncharted game at some point in the next 5 years. I reckon, personally, and I think that would be a wise thing to do, especially if they do take this tact of making Atreus the protagonist. There's a big time jump there. It makes sense to wait a bit longer. I think that would be the way to play it, where, Kratos' story, he basically has closure from what I can sense. Like, he's raised a son that's able to take care of himself. He's mourned his loss of his wife. He's not going to, what's he going to do? Like, marry Freya and have kids and then
Maybe.
like we got to raise them up. Like it would, you have to be introducing new drama that's not there at the moment. Whereas Ragnarok picked up from the last game that finished with plenty of stuff to build upon, where Kratos now has pretty much no story that needs to be pursued. So it is all about Atreus and his pursuit of the giants and his identity and the mysteries of this world and this realm. But I can see them doing something where, like what you said, Atreus finds his way into a different realm or a different mythology, and of course Kratos will show up as an older god. He probably doesn't die of old age when you're a god. I'm guessing that's part of the deal.
Immortality, baby.
And I think that's that reunion could be something to build a game around. I think that the way the game ended, we're also talking about the ending here. Kratos saying Loki will go, Atreus remains. That was such a beautiful moment between those two as father and son, building upon like the idea that they'd established previously of like, wherever you go, like, I'll have your voice in my head. Because I know you so well. In my heart.
Thank you very much.
And that's such a beautiful thing. Like I haven't lost a parent or anyone that I know so well that I could imagine exactly what they would be saying to me in any moment. But I feel like it has to be some kind of comfort to be able to go like, if Mum was here, this is what she'd say, and it'll make me smile or whatever it is. So it feels like they've separated without intention of necessarily meeting up again anytime soon. And that's Loki becoming an adult, essentially. But, I think that building a game around Atreus would probably be the way to go. And you can't call it God of Mischief. It has to be like God of War, something else still.
Yeah, I don't know what the naming convention will be, but
God of War 2026.
Son of God
just
of
quickly
War.
circling back. Yeah, that just those father-son moments were they really got me. I lost my old man a few years ago, and he was as shortly spoken as Kratos a lot of the time. He didn't mince words, and wasn't a very emotional guy. But seeing Kratos sort of let that guard down as the game progressed, and that last hug he had,
big hug
with Atreus, and you could see like the lip quiver, and that, like, I don't know if it was a solitary tear or there was just some welling of the eyes, but those parts or any of those moments where there was just, there was chaos and pain all around them, but then they had these just closed off, insulated moments where there was things said or a hug, or he put his hand on his shoulder when they were sort of sleeping in the war camp just before they went to Asgard. Those little moments got me really, really, really good. And I'm all for it. So give me more of this. Give me Atreus becoming more of a man. Yeah, I don't know what they'll call the game, but there's more coming. We'll see Santa Monica branch off and do a few other things and circle back on this between now and 2030, I'd imagine. All right, well, let's sort of share our last words on Ragnarok. It's funny because talking about leading into recording this, we're like, we'll keep this tight, we'll keep it concise, we'll try and roll this out in 60 to 75 minutes or so. And here we are.
It's too big a game. It's just massive. It's easy to just gush about it.
You guys just talk too bloody much with all your hate speech about you crawling under rocks and pressing this button for that and whatever. But no, I think. Even now, we've been talking for just a shade under 2 hours and 20 minutes, and we're still barely scratching the surface. Like, there's so many things we could uncover and unpack and explore, and we're not, but we're just sort of being mindful of time here. And my last word on Ragnarok is as simple as this. It's as perfect a game as you'll play this year or any other. So that's my last word on God of War Ragnarok. Benny, what you got for me?
Pretty much, I've been saying it through the whole thing. This game is deceptively big. It's epic on every scale. It literally is. I used to describe it earlier, but it's the end game for video games. Essentially, this game just feels big in every moment. Even the parts that do drag on, like you feel like there's bigger stuff happening in the background. Hence why you feel it drags on a little bit, because you want to get back to the big stuff that's happening in the background. This game is 100% worthy of Game of the Year contender and title. It is a masterpiece of a game.
Yeah.
Jono?
So there was a quote that was rolling through my head the whole time. Not the whole time, but often when I was playing this game. And it's from our friend Andy Bernard on The Office, when he said, I wish there was a way to know that you were in the good old days when you were still in them. And the whole time I was playing, just because of how good God of War 2018 was, I was just cherishing every moment in this game, because I knew that it was special before I played it. That's why I didn't watch any of the trailers. That's why I was so excited for it and keeping like a spot empty on my Game of the Year list, because I knew it was going to go straight to the top, and it has. I knew as I was playing it, like, we're going to be talking about this game for years to come. We're going to be thinking about this game. We're going to be comparing other games to it. So because of that, the way that I enjoyed this game was so much more amplified and appreciated. And, I finished it, and I thought to myself, I've probably still got a good 10 hours left. Maybe I've got 15. Maybe I've got more. Depends how quick I am, or so even as we're sitting here talking, I want to get off the recording and clear out a few more Odin's Ravens or Nornir chests, or
throw them all in the bin. Those stupid
ravens.
ravens.
Get back to it and appreciate this while I've got it, because it's such a long game that I don't know if I will go back and play it again, like I played God of War 2018 last year as kind of a primer for this. Maybe I'll play it again one day, but just enjoy it, cherish it. We've all got many more hours left to play in this game, so just enjoy every little crumb of that giant donut and every sprinkle that falls off. Just don't let any of them get away.
Very well said. I did say last word, not last New Testament there, Jono, but appreciate all the wording. That is bang on the money. It is such a special game, and take the time to explore every nook and cranny and listen to every interaction and story that plays out in front of your eyes most of the times very goddamn effortlessly and naturally, which I love. So God of War Ragnarok, 94 currently on Metacritic, is a short odds favorite for many Game of the Year lists all around the place, especially probably here at 8-Bit. But listeners, that does bring us to the official end of God of War Ragnarok Spoilercast edition. Be sure to rate, review, subscribe us and all the other podcasts you listen to on the regular on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Those ratings and reviews help keep the emotional lights on in our hearts. Be sure to follow us as a whole at We Are 8-Bit on the socials. Follow me at Brendan 8-Bit. Follow Jono at Jono himself, and follow Benny at Ben MCJ on them socials. But boys, it's been an absolute pleasure wielding this microphone-shaped axe, blades, spear, shield, whatever weapon of choice we had here, but it's all powered by Audio-Technica, the best in audio-based equipment. But until next time, listeners, may your life be spoiler-free. Boy.